first question I have for you here is, in 7 minutes or less, with information that is not available in your campaign literature or on your website, please tell us about your campaign platform and vision for District 1.
Well, so basically I kind of start out by who I am, and I tend to make my decisions based on my values and what I value. And well, should I be talking into the camera? I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I'm just kind of talking to the camera.
Talk to the camera. You're going to be your audience.
Okay, I'm just curious about that. I talk a lot about values, and so I'm going to make, when I am elected, I see myself as leading based on my values. And so when I think about what my values are as a leader, I think about trying to bring people in and making sure we include everybody and make sure everybody's part of the discussion. I think about trying to give people access to information, make sure they understand what's going on, make sure they can feel like they can pull on the levers of government and they can get done what they need to get done from the government. And I talk a lot about sustainability, and so valuing building over time and making sure that we're going to invest in the future and that we're going to get the future we want to see in the city of Tacoma. So how does that break down with my campaign? Well, I talk a lot about one of my key pieces of my platform is affordability. So making sure Tacoma is a place where people can afford to live, but not only low-income, fixed-income people, but holistic, affordability. So the business owner, the teachers I talk to on the street that are having trouble paying their property taxes. So that's kind of part of my platform is important. Second thing is accessibility, and that's both how do we move people about our city, so transportation, both public transportation and investing in our roads, our infrastructure. And then also how do we give people access to government. So, I'm from the south end of Tacoma, and I grew up with lots of people who didn't feel like they had access to the government, could get the government to meet their needs. And so that's another key part of my platform I think is important. And the last thing is sustainability. So looking at both environmental sustainability, so are we building in a way that's going to protect our environment that surrounds Tacoma that's very beautiful, and also are we building in a way that's going to make Tacoma successful 30, 40 years? Are we going to end up with the Tacoma we want to see? Because if I know my Tacoma history, I'm a history teacher, Tacoma has a history of boom and bust cycles. So we get really high and invest heavily in things, and then it collapses, and then we go back up, and it kind of our history is going back and forth, up and down. I'd like to get away from that. Try to think about, well, what do we want to see, and how do we invest over time to get there? And I think that's pretty much what my platform is.
Okay, good. So the next question I have for you is, describe your vision for appropriate development in mixed-use centers, including the Proctor District.
I think when we look at why we have mixed-use centers, the idea is to let people live, work, and have recreation within walking distance close. And so when I think about what we want our mixed-use centers to look like, we want them to be a place where people can live, people can walk, take a bike, and go to places to eat, places to buy things, and also hopefully places where they can work too. So the idea of getting people out of their cars and kind of building that neighborhood community feel. The idea of a mixed-use center is building, neighborhood, building a place where people feel pride in what's going on and that they feel committed to that area, connected to that area. So they think, I'm from this neighborhood, I don't need to go beyond it to get what I need. I can stay right here and I'll be able to interact with, work with the people who live around me. I'll be buying things from people who live down the street. It's the idea of, it's kind of building that neighborhood community feel. And I'd like to see that in the Proctor District, even more than it already is. I think this is a really successful neighborhood that has that. But, as a District 1 representative, I also have the James Center up on South 19th that's, another mixed-use center that we'd like to see that. Merrill Gardens is right down the street. We have one of the largest retirement homes in the city is right there. And if you walk the James Center, which you probably wouldn't want to do because there's not really a way to walk there, and it's basically car-oriented, that'd be great to get the same kind of feel there. And also we have Westgate up off of 26th and Pearl, and then hopefully soon Point Ruston down on the water. And I'd really like to see something more by Ruston. So the idea of getting people to have a neighborhood they feel pride in, that's self-contained, that they can move about, and that we're building that community in small spaces.
Okay. Next question. What changes, if any, do you hope to see in the Proctor District? How do you think these changes should be addressed?
I was thinking about that. Proctor's pretty built out, kind of wall to wall. I mean, there's a lot of space for us to do a lot of things. I said, things that I would want to do if we think of like a mixed-use center's purpose is to build that community, to build that neighborhood. There's things that we have here that we could do as a city to make this more of a community, more of a neighborhood. So, working with a library to get extended hours. Wheelock Library is one of the most popular libraries, the most well used in our city. How do we get extended hours, and how do we get it to, be more accessible to our neighbors? How do we work with the school district to give the neighbors in Proctor greater access to the field and greater access to that area out there, I think, are things we can look at working together to make this more of a community and more of that feel. When I think about where does it need to go in the future and how should it be, I mean, I want to be an elected official because I want to be an advocate for my neighborhood, for my district. And so I think, as I'm knocking on doors, I want to know what the neighbors think. I think that's the most important thing. I live about a mile away, so I'm kind of on the borders of the Proctor neighborhood, but we need to know, what do the people inside want to see, like the people who are close, the people who it's their community, it's their home, and really talking to them about, well, what do you want to see in the future? Where do you want it to go? Because I know that too often we can step away from a district and say, well, we have to think of the big picture. We have to think about how it fits in the whole thing, and sometimes lose the trees for the forest, right? So we step back and we say, well, this is how it's supposed to be the whole city, so this is what you have to do here, instead of saying, well, what do the neighbors want? What do they want in that neighborhood? So it's really looking for what the future should be, is what the neighbors want to see it end up like, and really try to be, as an elected official, really communicate those ideas and be an advocate to the city staff to make sure that we're trying to meet those needs.
Okay. Next question. How would you describe the character and ambience of the Proctor district? Do you believe that Proctor Station and additional buildings on a similar scale will preserve and enhance the character of the district?
So I was talking to somebody, I said, what I love about the Proctor district is it's from another time. So if you look at current building code and you wanted to build a building like the Knapp's building over there or some of the other buildings around here, you couldn't do it. There are all these off-street parking requirements. There's all these different things that you have to do that make the buildings less like they are, this kind of historic, walkable neighborhood. And Tacoma, or Proctor, is a kind of, it skips a period of time. So if you go to the Westgate Center, that's car-oriented development. So there's parking lots surrounding every piece of development. Proctor goes back to when we had streetcars, and it's walking, it's neighborhood-oriented development where people are going to walk there. So I think one of the charming things I like about Proctor and why I bring my family here is, we can walk here and we can walk to everything we need to do. And, the buildings are right up to the street. It's nice and lively. There's some vibrancy, so I think that's really good. When I think about the Proctor Station, I think that is the question of how does it fit. I mean, it's bigger than everything else that's here, but as long as it doesn't detract from that walkable neighborhood. I mean, I think that's what I think that really makes Proctor unique and special, is you can walk everywhere, you can get to everything. There's a lively, the buildings go straight up to the street. There's not a parking strip in front of every building that kind of separates you from what's going on. So I think that's what I really appreciate about Proctor. And as we look at Proctor Station, it's big, but as long as it doesn't detract from that walkability, that idea, you feel connected to the buildings, you feel connected to the community. I think it was important.
Okay. Next question. Many hundreds of your potential constituents support restoring the 45-foot building height limit in Proctor. Do you support excluding Proctor from the height bonus program, which allows the construction of buildings up to 65 feet tall in Proctor? Yes or no? Please explain.
Yes, if that's what most of the people in the district want. I mean, I think that's important. I see myself on the city council as an advocate for the district. So I'm not a citywide representative, I'm a district representative. So my job is to take the concerns of the neighborhood and be their advocate. I mean, I will say from a personal standpoint, I have multiple mixed-use centers that will be in my district. So James Center, Westgate, Proctor, Point, Ruston. And consistency means transparency, right? So consistency equals transparency. So if we have same consistent standards for every mixed-use center, then it's transparent. Everybody understands what they are. But with that being said, if the neighbors want that in Proctor, then that's something we need to make sure that you have a representative who's communicating that to the city and working towards that end. Because you all have paid to live here, right? You've bought property, you've bought into Proctor, and you bought into something that you wanted, and you have a right to be able to have your voice heard and to feel like it's a transparent process, that your concerns are being heard by the city and someone is advocating for you to make sure that happens. So the answer is, if the neighborhoods want it, then I'll be the advocate, and I'll do that. I'll tell you where I come down, and I think part of being an advocate is that you work with people, you tell them what you think, you give them your input, but in the end of the day, you advocate for what they want. And so if the neighbor wants that, then I'm in support of that, and I'll be an advocate of the city for that. But I also think that I'm also a District 1 representative, and I know one of the problems at Proctor, it seems like it's all happening here at once. And so I would tell you that my goal as a city representative is I need to get James Center started. I need to get the Westgate going. I need to get Point Ruston going. I need to get the Narrows down on 6th Ave going too. So I'm going to pledge you that I'm going to do my best to try to take all the energy that seems to be focused on Proctor for this mixed-use development and try to spread it out as best as we can, because we've got other mixed-use centers that really need it. And we need someone who can just kind of step back and say, let's kind of spread this out so that every area gets its fair share.
Next question. Have you received any campaign contributions from any developers, and if so, how might that influence your decision-making on the city council?
No, I've not received any contributions from any developers.
Okay.
So I think that, and that's, I don't think I always phrase that. Yeah, I think I have not received any, and so that won't have a big impact on kind of my stance. I talk a lot about being someone who wants to work for all the people that are in the district, and I think that's an important piece. If I did receive, campaign contributions from developers, which, the campaign is long. I think what I would want to make sure I talk to them about is be very clear that, I'm an advocate for the residents of the Proctor, and, I want to make sure that Proctor looks the way the residents want it to look.
Next question. Whether the height limit for development is 45 feet or 65 feet, how would you work to ensure that the Proctor District gets the necessary infrastructure to support mixed-use development? For example, parking, traffic patterns, pedestrian and bike safety.
I think it comes back to my idea that, I'm the advocate for the first district. I see my role as, on the city council as being part of a body that makes citywide policy, but that I am the advocate who conveys the issues in my district to the city council. I'm the one who's supposed to be doing my best to look out for you. So, I pledge right now that I will do everything I can to make sure that we get back everything that we're owed for how much we take in Proctor. So if we're the focus of development, if we're getting the most development, then we should be getting our fair share of investment. So roads, pedestrian safety, traffic lights, things like that we can make it safer here. My son's going to go to Mason Middle School. He's 2 years old right now, but he'll end up at Mason. So, the Proctor Station is a real concern for me. With traffic and what it's going to do to the neighborhood. And there's kids running around there all the time. And they're middle schoolers. I teach high school, but middle schoolers aren't the most informed kids. So the idea of safety and pedestrian safety and those investments are important for me. And I think that if we are bearing the brunt of development, so most of it's being focused in the Proctor District, then we need someone who's going to advocate and say, if we're going to take all this on, and this is going to bring in revenue to the city, then we need to make sure we're getting what we want out of it. So, there's a height bonus program. The bonus program is because the developers do certain things to get the extra feet. If we're taking on development, what are we getting in return for that? So green space is another thing that I think your group talks a lot about, is how do we preserve green space? I'll do my best to make sure we don't lose any canopy cover in the district. So all things that, I go back to being the advocate and pledging myself to really serving the district's needs.
Next question. You've had the opportunity to review 4 Proctor's purpose, vision, and beliefs statement. Please select at least 2 statements from the list of our beliefs that resonate with you and describe how you would uphold these beliefs.
Well, I think the first one that jumped out at me is transparency, right? The idea that you have someone that what the city is doing is transparent to all of you. So that not that you don't feel that development is happening to you and you don't have a voice, so that we have transparent procedures, that when development comes up, you know who you need to talk to if you're concerned, that you know where the meetings are, and that not only that you have someone, maybe your city council representative or someone who is helping you say, this is what you need to do. If you want this not to happen, if you don't want this to happen, here's what you need to have, here's what needs to happen, and to be your support to help, because part of my platform is accessibility, and I think accessibility and transparency are very similar. The idea of if we're transparent and we can give you access to the government, then you can you can do what you need to do. You can support your communities, and you don't need me, right? You won't need me. So, I'm willing to support us to get there, but the end goal is that we help the citizens understand the process so that they can make the community they want it to be. The other one I think is the infrastructure investments. So you talk a lot about the pedestrian safety and infrastructure. It was in the last question. I think that, I drive down was it Proctor, and I've seen so many car accidents because of, just, it's a narrow street. There's angle parking. There's, lots of activity. When the farmers market's going on, there are tons of pedestrians, and it can be a dangerous place if we don't really look at how do we invest and make it a safer place. How do we calm traffic? How do we look at parking and things like that, or signage, and to make it more safe for people to walk? Because that's why people come to Proctor. It's to walk around. It's to be able I can park my car 5 blocks away, and I can walk in and do everything I need to do and leave. Or I can walk from my house over by Wilson High School, it's a mile and a half, and get everything I need. So how do we make it safe for everyone, and how do we invest in the infrastructure to make sure that if growth does happen, how do we kind of mitigate that growth? How do we make it not as impactful as it could potentially be, or disruptive?
Okay. And our last question here. How would you view your role as an elected representative, given that you would be required to take positions on issues on which your constituents, businesses, developers, environmentalists, city staff members, and fellow council members might have differing views? If no compromise between these views is possible, would you support the position supported by the majority of your constituents?
Well, yeah, I think, so I'm the new person. I wasn't here for the last 4 years, so I have to talk about what I would do in the future. And, I think that when you are a district representative, at the end of the day, the district elects you to your position, right? You are chosen by them to be their advocate. And so at the end of the day, you have to do what you can to make sure you're representing the views of your district. Now, like I said earlier, if I disagree with some of the things that the district is saying, I'm going to come to you and I'm going to say, look, this is where I think, and this is what the city is saying, or this is what this group is saying, and here's where we stand. What do you think? And take your feedback and go forward to the city council. Say, look, I gave it my best shot. I said this is what we're thinking, but the district, these are their concerns. How do we address them? Can we get to a point of compromise? Because at the end of the day, whether or not I'm elected, it's all going to be based on what you all decide. Who you're going to pick, who gets to fill this spot next. And so at the end of the day, I want to make sure I'm working with you as best I can. And we have at-large city council members. Their job is to be elected to represent the entire city. I talk a lot about, I see my job as being the representative of the West End and the North End and my areas, and seeing how our neighborhood fits into the city. So what are our needs, what are our unique and special areas that we have, and how do they fit into the city? We have people that deal with citywide issues, they're the citywide elected representatives, and so I would try to really work there. And I think, I'm good at working with, other people. I'm a team player. I can do a lot of things and build coalitions. So I hope that having me elected will allow me to advocate in a way to really support our district and really bring other people in to kind of help us out as best we can.
Okay. Well, that